Hello and welcome back to another The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live video, and today will be my review for episode 5, Become, and this is the episode which is basically Rick and Michonne's honeymoon. That's the best way I could describe this. Their honeymoon, trying to get back to Virginia, but then Jadis comes up and the episode turns into trying to stop Jadis to go and save Alexandria. That's really what the episode is. And I do have to say, this episode really does feel like a throwback to season 5 Walking Dead, but just because we see our characters on the road again. I really like that, and I didn't know how much I missed seeing our characters doing that, like surviving, having to go and scavenge. It is very much, very quickly, like bam, bam, bam. But I really do like our characters traveling, and it really does give us some cool shots. We get some amazing shots in this episode. I would have to say this episode is written well, does have really good pacing. It just goes for the story very good. You get the first part of the episode, which is about Rick and Michonne's relationship, them traveling, and then being in this new honeymoon phase. Rick is getting little presents for Michonne, talking about, oh, can I get this for RJ? And that's just really nice. It's just, I really like how hopeful these characters are. And then you have the second half of this episode, which focuses on Jadis found Rick and Michonne. And then the episode, I really thought this episode was going to go, they're going to be running from Jadis, and they're going to fail somehow. No, immediately, which I thought was very dumb, Jadis lets Michonne tie Rick to the bed. But I was like, okay, he's got one hand, so you can't really tie both his limbs to the bed. And then she just kind of gets overwhelmed very quickly, and then gets a hatchet into the gut. And the episode turns into not Rick and Michonne on the run, it's Jadis on the run. I didn't like how Jadis was so easily overwhelmed by them, and the episode is all about hunting down Jadis to stop her from destroying Alexandria. That was my one gripe. I just feel the weaker part of this episodes are to do with Jadis, like how she woke them up so she could talk to them. I know they explain it in this episode where she didn't want to kill them asleep because she didn't want to leave things unsaid, because she's done that before. And this episode, I've watched this episode twice now. This episode, originally when you're thinking that, you think, oh, they're talking about this character, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then you find out later, actually, she's talking about Huck. Because what happens in World Beyond, she just kind of murders Huck and moves on with life. And then screws over her mum. Which just kind of gets, like, I really thought we would see Elizabeth Kubrick or have some reference to her in this show. But it seems she has forgotten, but at least Huck is mentioned. Not by name, but she's mentioned in this. But I just feel like they could have done a bit more Jadis. Just, They had the characters feel too unstoppable. Like, I didn't like how Rick and Michonne dealt with Jadis way too easily. But moving past that, I would say this episode is written very well, paced well. I liked the acting. It wasn't as phenomenal as last episode, but it was done well. I like Jadis. Jadis had some emotional scenes this episode, and I did feel for the character. I really did like Jadis' performance, the actor for Jadis. Amazing character. I would have to say this episode, though, is very predictable. I predicted what would happen in this episode, and I predicted next episode, and yes, I'm correct. That's my one downside. This episode was very predictable, outside of one thing, and big spoiler, Gabriel was in this episode, and that was absolutely amazing. I was shocked when I saw him, because I really thought, okay, we might see Silas, or we might see a World Beyond character. I don't know why. I thought we were going to get a World Beyond character. I knew we were going to get a Walking Dead cameo, but I thought it was for World Beyond, not Gabriel, and it was amazing to see Gabriel. I absolutely loved the scenes. I wanted more of him. I didn't know how much I missed that character. He's one of my favourite characters in the last couple of seasons of The Walking Dead, and to see him again was absolutely amazing. And his scenes in this episode are the best part of the episode. I'm saying right now. Everything else was very predictable, but it was still enjoyable. And then you just had Gabriel's scenes with Jadis, and that completely stole the show for me, because I just really did like the Jadis-Gabriel dynamic in each time we saw him. We see Gabriel in 5 flashbacks, I think. 5. The first one, I'm a bit unsure when that takes place, because we see Gabriel killing a walker, helicopter flying over him, and him praying. I'm unsure when that takes place. But the 3 middle ones, we know when they take place. So the furthest one, 3 years before the events of this episode, that is either the start of season 10 or the back half of season 9. The second time, is 2 years before, is after episode 16 of season 10, but before episode 1 of season 11, so in those bonus COVID episodes. And the last one is during the Commonwealth arc. And what I really like about these flashbacks is, one, it humanizes Jadis. It makes you really care for her and feel for her a little more because she's softened around Gabriel. Gabriel is able to call her Anne and not get a shitty response back. Just Gabriel can get more out of her, and I really do like their nice little scenes together. I've gotten over Rick and Michonne now. I just want to see more Gabriel at this point. And then the second thing I do want to say, and it's negative, is that these flashbacks further break the timeline of this show and the Walking Dead universe. Because in the third time we see Gabriel, the second time him and Anne meet is 2 years before this episode. And in that flashback, he mentions that the wolves are down, they are starving, can they send aid? Jadis goes no, and then he goes, well, I won't see you next year because I could be dead. And that means that flashback takes place after Season 10 Episode 16, but before Season 11 Episode 1. And that means that this flashback takes place in 2022. The reason we know it's in 2022 is because of Here's Negan very clearly establishes that it's been 12 years in because of that 12-year jump back in time to see Lucille. So now we know that flashback takes place in 2022. What's the problem? Well, the previous episode also established that this show takes place in 2022 also because RJ is apparently just about to turn 8, and we know RJ was born in 2014. So what the hell is going on? This show is apparently in 2022, but then the next episode says that this show takes place in 2024. It's really, really annoying that every show doesn't know their own timeline. They're just kind of throwing numbers out there. Fear's done it. Daryl Dixon's done it. Daryl Dixon still thinks it takes place in 2022 because of the 12 years in, but The Walking Dead didn't end to 2024. It's just so annoying, the inconsistencies, and I get really annoyed every time I see them retcon their own timeline. They have established Rick left The Walking Dead 3.5 years in. Rick was taken in 2013. And it doesn't make any more sense because even in episode 1, so that we know episode 1 takes place apparently 11 years in, but then you have episode 4 saying it takes place 12 years in, and then you have this episode saying it takes place 14 years in. They just keep changing. They've had 3 different dates for when this show takes place in this. But let's just move past this whole timeline thing because it really does annoy me. Let's talk about some positive things. And the way they end this episode, I do quickly want to mention, I really do like Rick and Michonne getting engaged at the end of the episode. It's a very nice moment. I also want to quickly mention, because I didn't mention it earlier, the music in this episode is amazing. I really do like the way this show looks and sounds. It just sounds so good and looks so good. But the final thing I do want to talk about is a very big spoiler, and that is Jadis' death. And I wasn't ready for how emotional it was. It was just so good. And I think what makes it worse and more emotional is the final flashback we see of Gabriel, or not flashback, it's in the present now, of Gabriel going back to the spot to wait for Jadis, and then you just kind of see clips of him waiting all day and Jadis never came, and just kind of pushes the knife in further that Gabriel liked her and you just waited all day for it. And it's just like, wow. I think because you didn't have Gabriel, if you didn't have him in this episode, we wouldn't care as much, but because Gabriel cared about Jadis so much, it made us care, or made me care. And I wasn't ready for her death. I was like, oh, wow, she's dead. She's like kind of a massive character in the entire Walking Dead universe. She's hopped into the most shows. She's played a very big role in the universe, moving things around. And it's just quite sad to see her go, and it was very well done. I just can't give this episode enough praise at times, but I can also talk a lot of bad things about this episode, with it being too predictable, and them absolutely breaking the timeline again. But let's move over to a one sentence, that's one overall review, and I have to say, this is a great episode. I really enjoyed it, and I would give it a 9 out of 10. I can't give it a 10 out of 10 just because of how much that timeline issue has messed me up. But please tell me down below, what did you like about this episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? And what are your thoughts about seeing Gabriel again? Did you miss him like I did? And do you really want a Gabriel spin-off? I really want to see Gabriel again in his own show, or at least have a role in another show. But that's it for me today. So goodbye, peace out. I'll talk to you later.